From Islam's impressive last few fights to what a potential matchup against Rocky could look like, here's everything you need to know about Islam Makhachev's challenging Leon Edwards. It's no secret that the Dagestani fighter is the king of the UFC's lightweight division, and he's got the numbers to prove it. At 24-1, his record is nearly flawless, and that's something a few fighters can only dream of. If anyone had any doubts about his skills, they were all silenced after UFC 284, when he went up against none other than Alexander the Great Volkanovski. The bout extremely competitive and technical. And what else can you expect when it comes to a top pound-for-pound number 1 versus number 2 fight? Islam and Alexander brought out the big guns for the fight, but ultimately, the 31-year-old fighter reigned supreme. As for what went down during the fight, you won't be surprised to know it was nothing less than intense. In the beginning, it was clear that Volk had one advantage, and that was because he was sharper and much faster when it came to striking. Even though Volk proved himself and his brilliant fight IQ, it just wasn't enough to defeat Islam Makhachev. Like I said though, the fight was a close call, and the Great even won the 5th round. His scrambling skills were top-notch, but when it came to grappling, he was no match for Makhachev. Dagestani fighters are known for their grappling skills, and Islam proved that he's unmatched when it comes to them. The fight was definitely one of the most engaging ones fans have seen in a long time, and it's all thanks to the two determined opponents. In the end though, it just proved that Islam Makhachev is a highly skilled fighter with levels to his game. If fans didn't have proof of it before, they surely had it after UFC 284. The same goes for UFC 280, when the Dagestani fought Charles Oliveira. This bout too was highly anticipated by fans and fellow fighters alike. In true Makhachev fashion though, he started off the fight strong with that intense forward pressure. After this, Oliveira responded with one of his trademark level changes and secured a takedown. Then, Makhachev went all out with a takedown and backtrip combination. That's not where it stopped though, because the 31-year-old fighter went on to throw a barrage of punches, and as expected, Oliveira just couldn't defend himself in time. Makhachev made light work of DeBronx. This much was clear by the end of the 2nd round. I mean, that high kick and the flying knee, it was over for Charles before he knew it. And while he tried to stop the attack from Islam with a takedown, the attempt was very unsuccessful. Makhachev's overhand sent Oliveira sprawling to the mat, and the latter ended up submitting, crowning Islam Makhachev the undisputed lightweight champion of the world. Islam is such a force of nature, a lot of fighters are scared of going up against him. After all, who would want to risk bringing down their ranking? Given the Russian fighter's record, it's no surprise that others don't want to mess with him. Michael Chandler recently called him out for not going up against any of the top 5 contenders in the UFC, and while that's true, there's a surprising explanation for it. A lot of lightweight contenders really don't want to fight Islam. This isn't anything new, because fans have been hearing reports like these for almost 2 years now. This might seem a bit weird, especially because Islam has an exceptional record. Chandler threw major shade at him for not taking on better fighters, but Islam's coach Javier Mendez offered an explanation for this. He reminded Chandler, as well as the rest of Makhachev's doubters, that opponents choose not to fight him because they didn't want to risk their ranking. Now, if that's not proof of how excellent of a fighter he is, then I don't know what is. From everything I've just talked about, one thing's clear. Islam is not stopping anytime soon. He wants to keep taking on bigger and better opponents. And right now, he's on a mission to fight the welterweight Leon Edwards. The Russian really wants to make this fight happen, and just a few months ago, tweeted out that he wants to fight Rocky next, and he's willing to take on him in Abu Dhabi this October. After it was announced that the lightweight champion would be headlining UFC 294 in October, he tweeted out the same thing once again. He fucked the UFC and ESPN MMA, asking them what they think about a Makhachev versus Edwards fight in Abu Dhabi soon. As you can imagine, MMA fans were going up in flames after Islam's challenge. It's clear that he's not the tame young fighter everyone called Khabib's protege a few years ago. No, he's a force to be reckoned with just on his own. And now, he's not afraid to come out and ask for harder opponents. Considering this call-out was so public, people had a lot of opinions on what could happen if a fight between the two legends is actually scheduled. Ben Askren, who you might know as a former One Championship and Bellator MMA gold holder, thinks that if the fight happens, Islam is done for. To Ben, Leon is going to emerge victorious because he poses a massive threat to the Russian, especially considering how much Rocky's skills have improved over the past few months. Apparently, Askren is really impressed by the progress that Edwards has made. If he actually fights Makhachev, the lightweight champion is going to have a tough time. After all, Leon's the kind of guy who can do literally anything, including defending takedowns, throwing clean strikes, and just holding his own. One thing's for sure, if the fight ends up happening, it could be one of the most entertaining ones that the UFC has ever seen, especially because Edwards is coming fresh off a win against the dangerous Kamaru Usman. After that win though, Leon hasn't stepped in the ring yet, and sadly, Islam's dreams of taking on him in Abu Dhabi have been crushed. Just a few days ago, the UFC announced Makhachev will defend his lightweight title against Charles Oliveira instead. But all hope isn't dead yet, because rumors are floating around about Leon Edwards making his return in November, and it could be against the former interim champion Colby Covington. Sounds exciting, right? Speaking of Colby, he also has a lot of opinions on a potential Islam versus Leon matchup. Considering he's been trying to secure a fight with the English fighter for so long, it's fair to say that he's well acquainted with Edwards' skills. Unfortunately though, the UFC has been quiet about Leon Edwards' possible return, as well as his next fight. Recently, in an interview with Submission Radio, Chaos opened up about a lot of things and made sure to mention Islam Makhachev of challenging Rocky. It looks like Colby doesn't really take the call out seriously, and said that the Dagestani is unlikely to succeed at welterweight. The former interim welterweight champion gave the example of Alexander Volkanovski's performance in the fight against Islam, saying that that's one of the reasons he would struggle welterweight. Colby said that the little Australian midget had Islam in trouble, and went on to call Volk a little shrimp on the barbecue. If a shrimp like that has Makhachev struggling, then he's no match for Leon Edwards. Hey, those are Colby Covington's words, not mine. Now, we don't know whether the fight will happen or not, but you can't deny that this is the perfect opportunity for the lightweight champ to take advantage of. The 155-pound division is already so messy, with fighters like Oliveira, Poirier, and Gaethje all doing their own thing. Of course, you can argue that someone like Beneil Dariush would be a better fit to headline the event, but he's also coming off a really bad loss. As for Michael Chandler, he's focused on the McGregor fight. All the leading contenders are busy right now, or worse, not genuinely deserving of an opportunity. Plus, you can't deny that Edwards makes for a more interesting opponent than anyone else for Islam. So, from what a potential matchup against Rocky could look like, to Islam's impressive last few fights, this was everything you need to know about Islam Makhachev challenging Leon Edwards.